Hey guys, today we are going to have another conversation with a multi-craft tool maker, and today we are going to meet Madeleine Windsor. Madeleine Windsor is a knitwear designer that we have actually been working with at SweetGeorgia for many, many years now, probably since 2016. She's done a number of knitwear designs for our collections and worked very closely with Tabitha over the years. And in the past couple of years, she's also become our SweetGeorgia brand ambassador. And so I wanted to sit down with her today and have a conversation with her about everything about her knitwear design, about working at home with kids this past year, all sorts of things like that. And yeah, stay until the end because I want to talk to you a little bit more about the conversation that we had. I have many thoughts about it. So let's go to the conversation now. So welcome, Madeleine. This is like, we have not had really a chance to chat very much in, I don't even remember. I think the last time that we had a conversation, we were sitting like this is when we were talking about doing the brand ambassador stuff, right?
That was a couple of years ago now. I think it was 2 summers ago when we first spoke about that, because I had just moved to the US. I was in the US, so it can't be more than 2 years ago. Yeah, just after I'd moved.
So tell us a little bit about you and yourself, because you're just talking about how you've moved. Can you tell us about where you were before, where you are now?
Sure. So I'm originally from the UK, but before I was living here, I was living in Zurich, Switzerland. I was there for about 10 years. So I've been here for 2 years and I was there for 10 years. And my husband's Italian, so I have a husband, we have 3 children. And we're both scientists by training, so we're both research scientists. And we were working in Zurich, basically, and then my husband got a new job, so we're here in Tennessee, in the US now, since the past 2 years. So yeah, life's been very busy, and we were fortunate enough to move before COVID era, but once that kicked in, of course, it was also, it also means unfortunately we've been cut off from family in Europe since that started, so yeah, life's been very different, but it's been interesting, definitely. It's made a big change in our lives.
Yeah. I just, I popped onto your YouTube channel and I saw your last video that you posted, which was about a couple months ago. And you're like, all of 2020 was like, don't really want to talk about it. Let's move on.
We've been fortunate. It's not that we've had a particularly tough time with it. It's been way worse for many people, but it was a very unique year. And I think especially so for us because we were so much in a different country, in a different continent, and everybody else back in there, my husband's family in Italy with their situation and my family in the UK and everybody, it was always a lot to talk about, but it wasn't always very positive. So children, we've got our 3 children here, so trying to deal with them being at home and then going back to school and all of the different restrictions. It's definitely been a big juggling act.
Yeah. So you have 3 kids, like you mentioned. How old are your kids now? They're still quite young, right?
They're 9, 6, and 2.
Wow. It's a big range.
Yeah, quite a range. And we've got a big, we still haven't hit the teenage, but we've definitely got all the rest of it covered at the moment. Yeah.
So this is the interesting thing, is that when I was watching you talk on your podcast and you're like, you're juggling all these things, you're homeschooling the kids, 3 kids at home and all these kinds of things. And yet you're like, I have lots of finished objects to talk about and lots of works in progress and things like that. And so I just wonder, like, juggling all of these roles and responsibilities, where are you finding that time and how are you fitting it in order to make things?
It's not, I don't always have the time, right? Sometimes it comes in first. And I think when, a few years back when I kind of really got into the passion knitting, and once I found out that if I had the time, I could produce stuff, there was a time of friction there, right? A time where I was like, if only I didn't have all these responsibilities. But I've definitely hit a point in my life now where I can, incorporate all of those things. And it means sometimes I don't get to knit every day. But one of the reasons you saw a lot of finished objects then was because I haven't recorded a video in a while. So that's a secret. Don't show people things for a while and then you have a bunch of stuff to show. But I think I've definitely become a bit, I mean, I'm not a monogamous knitter, but I've become a bit more of one. And that has helped me to get, quicker through having things finished. And yeah, I try and dedicate some time when I can. And I mean, that's one of the reasons that knitting, when I found it, which I came back to it when my eldest daughter was a baby, because I had done a little bit when I was younger. My grandmother was a knitter. She knit us letters and what have you. And so she taught me. And when I came back to it, it was great to create something again and feel like I was, doing something, getting to play with all these colors and different textures and learning the techniques. That was a big thing for me. Maybe because I'm a scientist, I just loved getting to see how beautiful something was, but then learning how that was made, like how that cable worked. And that I always found very fascinating. And I love that it was portable. Again, not maybe a huge blanket, but you could always take a sock to the park with the kids. So I always do that. And there's been times where it's a bit pathological, where it's like, there's 5 minutes, I could be knitting. So there's definitely that for me. But with the kids, it's definitely putting in every little bit that I can.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I do love how the projects that you pick, they're always very, I mean, to me, they're really inspiring to me because they're always super colorful. They're very fun. There's something about it that just seems very free, like your choices, your selections. It just seems like really open, really free. Yeah, I mean, I'm wearing this sweater. I made this because I saw you made this sweater and I was like, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. I need to make that. And so, yeah, I found that actually quite inspirational. I'm curious about right now in the knitting world, what are you feeling drawn to? What are you feeling like is really fun for you and inspiring for you?
Yeah, so I definitely, after my initial learning a lot of different techniques in knitting, I was definitely knitting a lot of accessories. I discovered shawls and then socks. So I've been through a bit of all of those phases. I still do a bit of all of that. I got on a big sweater kick probably a couple of years ago after initially making 1 or 2 over the previous couple of years and thinking that, but I'm never going to be able to make something that's really beautiful or I want to wear or I'm proud of. Like maybe it'll just be obvious that it's something a knitter made. It's not to be derogatory to that, but I was like, how am I going to incorporate that into my wardrobe? So that's something I've really got into. And I think that came, the industry, certainly at least the online knitting industry and community and Instagram got really into sweaters probably around the same time I was. And I found that really, really inspirational. And it toned some of my color obsession down a little bit because I was like, okay, now I have to maybe knit something just with one color, which not because you have to, but I've actually found that a nice experience and challenge. And I did find that generally if I was knitting something in 1 color or 2 colors, I was more likely to constantly wear it. And I have sweaters I now wear sweaters every single day to work. And there's I was in Europe before, that we don't have a ton of air conditioning. Here over in North America, everything's air conditioned. So it doesn't matter that it's 35 degrees outside, it's freezing inside. So I wear my sweaters here way more than I ever did in Switzerland because there, once it was summer, they had to go away because everywhere was too warm. So I'm actually enjoying it. I'm a year-round sweater wearer now, even though I'm in a very hot place. So definitely, yeah, different constructions. So I just finished, literally yesterday finished a cardigan by Bristol Ivy, sorry. It's called the Weights cardigan, and it was knit like you start by knitting the whole cast on all the way for like the front lapel's like an open cardigan, and then it's worked kind of like a mitered square back down from that to make the rest finish off the piece, and I found that fascinating, and that's my first time knitting pattern by Bristol Ivy. So yeah, I'm just exploring the different ways that you can make sweaters. I think is definitely been my current obsession.
Yeah, I'm seeing like color work on your feed as well, I
make yoke sweaters, and I keep coming back to that. I don't actually love the action of doing color work still. I try because I love the look so much. So I'm trying desperately to be someone who makes an all over color work sweater, but I haven't got there yet. I haven't, but I have made a couple recently with split stitches, and that's a great way to get a good effect as well, right? Without having to actually manage the yarns.
Like, yeah, you just said about doing all over color work. That could be like quite a quite a dedicated, like a commitment to do a whole sweater in color work. But like a color work yoke is totally manageable.
I've done several yokes, and it's just what gets me through them is knowing that it's going to look beautiful, and then I can do the stockinette, which is not that I wasn't someone who liked a lot of stockinette, but I prefer doing all kinds of different stitches. But again, talking about that balance and having the time to get things done, I've got more time that I can sneak in some stockinette where I can knit without having to look because I'm watching a movie with my husband or I'm out with the kids, and I don't need a chart right then, and I can just power through. So I need that balance of something, but a bit more complex on the needles and something a bit more.
Yeah. So we skipped over it a little bit because you were mentioning that both you and your husband are research scientists. So I'm curious, what did you study? Did you guys both work together and study the same thing, or are you studying different things?
So we work together now. We have done pretty much everything we met, which was actually back in the UK when I was doing my PhD in Cambridge in the UK. That's back when we met. And my background was chemistry. So I did a chemistry degree and master's, and then my PhD is technically in chemistry, but really it's biochemistry, and he comes from biology side. So we're different, but we've ended up in the same place.
That's very cool, because also you have this whole other thing where you design knitting patterns. It's like, for many people, it's like it's a whole other career, and the amount of work that goes with all of that, right? We have been working together since 2016. I know that we've published a number of patterns from you.
Yeah, yes, definitely.
Beautiful patterns.
Yeah, and I just love it. And SweetGeorgia was not the first ever design I did, but it was maybe the second. And it was the first time I ever worked with a yarn company. Like, the first one I ever did was a magazine. And they were like, yeah, pick your yarn. As long as, it's generally available, go with it. And I was like, okay, see how it works. And then I discovered after that whole process, all of, both people working with indie dyers and hand-dyed yarn. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And I actually had a friend back in Switzerland. She used to run Pearlescence in the UK, but then she'd moved to Switzerland. So she sold that business on, but she'd taken a lot of SweetGeorgia yarn with her because Pearlescence, I think, still stocks SweetGeorgia. And I just discovered, like, she tipped out this yarn once. This was, back in 2015, I think 16. And I was like, oh my goodness, this yarn's amazing. And then I happened to see on Ravelry that you had, calls for designers open. And I just was like, you never try, you never know, right? And I got a yes straight away. And I was so enthused. And so I've done several designs with your yarn now. And it's always remained, it's an absolute fast favorite of mine. And that's why I was so happy when you were looking for ambassadors that we were able to embark on that together, because I truly love Georgia's color, and the bases. Like, I just think there's such high quality yarn there, and you'll never disappoint.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really love it. And so I did bring over a few of the projects just for my inspiration around me of the projects that I've done with your yarn.
Do you have things to show? Oh, let's do that.
I made Tabitha's Midnight Bellini pattern. And so I made that with these, and it's my first time working with, working a shawl in this way, like on the bias, like more of a scarf way on the bias. And I just loved, these colors here are like my jam. I'm a teal girl. So I really, really enjoyed making that. That was I think I made that mostly last summer, knitting, I think I went on vacation with me. And recently, I haven't got that project with me. I have just started a new project using one of your spring colorways. I've forgotten the name of the colorway now. Like a gorgeous, I think, corally blue from your spring collection. I'm making a circular yoke, like tee, top-down tee, but not color work. Just it's got like a twisted stitch motif at the top. So free tee by Irmian Designs.
Now, are you doing a ton of designing right now, or sort of like taking a pause?
Yeah, designing's definitely been on a pause. It takes a lot of designing anyway for me, given that I was never able to do it full time, a job and also my kids. It's a big job of juggling because there's so many aspects that actually come together right at the time. All the selecting yarn, but then the pattern writing, editing and the testing, and every one of my designs is that full process, because otherwise I wasn't confident in putting it out. And that's just been a bit too much of late. Ever since we moved to the US, basically, I thought things would restart after an initial period, and then we had the pandemic. So it definitely hasn't been happening much. I have done a little bit of work with you guys, but I don't think that's available yet. A little teaser. But I'm hoping to get back to it. But what I have done a huge amount of, and I've been doing it ever since I started designing, is I'm also a tech editor. I really love it. And that's also my sciencey part. I love math. I love spreadsheets. And I love combining that with help my clients through their patterns. So that's been easier. It's just been, probably I could have used some time for designing, but when I had the time, I was using it for tech editing because it just gave me the thought that in my available time recently. So, and that's kind of taken off in the past few years. So we'll see. Maybe there'll be more time for designing when you're a little bit bigger, or just dotting in a few here and there at the moment.
Yeah. I feel like that whole world of tech editors and a lot of support for knitwear designers is very needed. And I don't know that everybody knows where to go to find a tech editor. Like if you're starting a knitting, designing, work, and you need someone else to take a look at your pattern just to make sure that it's readable, that somebody can follow it, that all the specs are right. Like it's hard to know where to go to find somebody to do this.
Really important. And I mean, of course, with ever since the online knitting community, really exploded, of course, it became a lot easier to get patterns out there. And you've got this type of, genre of indie pattern designer, which didn't really, barely existed before, if at all, really. If you were designing for a yarn company or for your yarn store, or, what have you, right? Everything was a bit, you weren't just all that out by yourself. And there are a lot of things to coordinate in with that. And I don't know how, I could never have done it without any help, or without any, but Ravelry was where I found those people and found that community. But of course, not everybody's on Ravelry. So it can be difficult. It's something I have thought about in terms of, there are a few hubs building up with some of the good tech editors that I know of who are both helping and training other people in tech editing. And within them, I guess if people know that they exist, then they can go and ask who's available. But yeah, there isn't one clear path. It's a bit of a word of mouth type situation. And that's just how it generally has been. I mean, for me, I have never hugely advertised it. It's been something that's come to me more, word of mouth, that someone recommends me, which is nice, right? And you go that way.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have links or anything like that to places or resources where people can find information about how to learn how to tech edit or how to learn how to write these patterns and things like that. I know that we very often get approached by people who are starting to learn how to design their own patterns and they don't know really how to go. And so I know Tabitha helps a lot with that as well. But, any other resources that we can send people would be amazing.
Yeah, I can provide a couple links down below. Yeah.
Fantastic. So how can I ask you, because you have been you were in Switzerland before, you were in the UK before, and now you're in the US. Do you notice a big cultural difference or difference in the knitting community between these two places where you've been?
So I think so. I've never really been I've never lived in the UK while being a knitter. When I go back there, it's nice because there are, so I really got into the community definitely with podcasts on YouTube. I think that's true. Nowadays, you started knitting, right? And you're by yourself, and maybe you don't have a local yarn store, which I didn't really have in Switzerland because I didn't know. I went to a couple of the ones where they weren't indie, they weren't the kind of yarn stores that I was hearing people talk about, right? And so I was on YouTube, right, teaching myself to do techniques by following knitting tutorial videos. And then at some point it suggests podcasts, right? So I was starting to watch these, and most of these were based in the UK or the US. And so I felt like I was part of the UK community, or I was hearing about the stores or the yarn events that they were going to, but I was never actually doing any of that because I was in Switzerland and there was none of that going on. Now the German-speaking knitting community has definitely been on the rise, I would say, in the past certainly the past decade, and I've heard of more and more that was going on in Germany. And I was living in the German-speaking part of Switzerland, so I was hearing about that. And then before I left Switzerland, we did actually have the Swiss Yarn Festival, which a couple of people had set up there, which was great, which was my first chance to really experience a mini version of one of these, Knit City or what have you, right? It was small, but there were some great people there. There were some great indie young people came from, all over Europe for that. And so that was really nice. So I think it's building up over there. There is a big tradition of knitting, of course, in these places, but people, when they saw me knitting on in the park in Zurich, were generally, if they spoke to me at all, would be like, oh, kind of, suggesting, aren't you a bit young to be knitting, right? This is kind of there was surprise. But there was definitely that. Although there was, in Zurich itself, there was definitely, there were a few people doing various events, different yarn, bit more multi-craft. There's like Anna and Juan there who do botanical dyed yarns, and they also do crames, stitching, they do indigo tie-dyeing, they do crochet, they have a lot of different things going on there. So that's great. If anyone's in Zurich, they should definitely come check out Anna and Juan. And then since coming here, it's like harder. It's like kind of coming home to like the place where I think so much of the craft type trends come from is the US. Like also when I was younger, I used to do a bit of scrapbooking, and every product came from the US, right? Everything was about, and like my mum's a quilter, right? So all the quilts here, it's just amazing. You wish you had enough rooms in your house to have a room dedicated to every craft. Mm-hmm. So I found it quite inspirational coming here and feeling like I was closer to a lot of that, definitely. But then the pandemic hit, so I haven't been able to, I was like, I'm finally going to get to go to, maybe not Rhinebeck, but something, right? And then no. So it feels like that's a bit on hold, but I've definitely had different experiences in different places.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I was seeing that like the very first episode of your podcast that you put out was back in 2017. So that's been a number of years now. How has that whole experience been for you? And like, what have you learned from doing all of that?
Yeah, I put that out. That was my very first one. I think it was pretty excited for one of my pattern releases, and I'd been watching podcasts at that point for a while, and I was like, oh, I could never do that. I could never stand the camera. I could never talk to people. Like I'm I don't know, an introverted extrovert. Like I do love being around people, but the idea of it being up there and anybody being able to see it when they want to, and me not interacting directly with that person. And I still find that whole format, it's a bit strange. But then I stopped and I thought, but I've loved watching these things so much. I've learned so much from podcasts, and I've learned about different yarns and learned about different patterns and different viewpoints, not just always of knitting. People talk about all kinds of things on their podcasts. So I wanted to give it a go. And I had a great response. I think I've had a small audience because I've never been able with my life to be like super consistent. I'm never that one who can say, I upload every week or every other week at this time. That's just not what it is for me. It's another form of my outlet, and I share what I have done. And at least 10 people on every episode will somehow contact me to be like, oh my gosh, I have to make that pattern, or I want to do this, or where did you get that yarn? And that's enough for me. I'm just like, that's great. That's like a little interaction of, I've never really had a knit group. It was a small one I started going to when I moved here, but then that had to stop. So it's my knit group, I guess, even though it's, there's a lacking on one side because it's just me talking to a camera, but somehow it all works, right? All the podcasts, all the different formats of talking to people all come together in a way that you do end up making connections.
Yeah, it's wonderful. That's what this is going to be. This is what this is.
I love it. I've been watching you guys. You had these knit nights all throughout the pandemic and everything, and I've always wanted to join in. And again, life goes by, right? It's like kids have to go to bed, dinner has to be made, and then it's the next week again. So
Exactly.
I'm at that point in my life right now where I can always plan in the chances to go and do specific things with other people or what have you. So I guess having my time where I can set up the camera and record myself is what I can do.
Yeah, I'm in exactly the same boat, and that's probably why I do this. Yeah, I hear you completely. But thank you so much for taking this time today. I know you're busy, and I know even just getting this scheduled, we were like, I don't know, when can we do it? Can we do it?
I know it's things, and I always just like, I don't know, when you have, you have children in general, when you have more than one children, there's 3 chances that someone might call you and say you have to pick them up because something's happened. You know what I mean? Like it's just, yeah. So it can be a challenge sometimes, but in general, we're very happy. We're in a good place and grateful for the situation that we've managed to be in over this past difficult years. I just feel like I'm grateful in general at the moment. So.
Yeah, well, I'm very thankful that, like, despite your busy life, despite all of the things that are going on and all your responsibilities, that you continue to design things and knit things and share them with everyone, share them with us, but share them with everyone, either through your Instagram or through your YouTube. Is that the best place where people can come and find you? Or
so I have a website, which is madelinewindsor.com, and I can give you the links to these places. And I have, my podcast on YouTube, which is under Kingfisher Knits, which has always been my kind of like brand name. I have designs on Ravelry, and also some tutorials on YouTube. I'm hoping to do a few more of those actually, because again, part of my process has always been, I really like helping people out and learning something new and then teaching that on to someone else.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. So that was our little conversation with Madeleine. I hope you enjoyed that little chat. Now, after Madeleine and I said, okay, we're done with the interview now, and we stopped recording, then we just proceeded to continue to have another conversation for another half an hour or so. And that part of the conversation I thought was very interesting, because I felt like that was exactly the thing that I needed to talk about at this exact moment in time. And there's a lot of things where you'll hear that Madeleine has 3 kids, I have 2 kids, and they're very much same age, they're very similar ages and things like that. And so a lot of the things that she has gone through with juggling her home life and her kids and her work and her aspirations, all of that I feel like is a little bit ahead of where I'm at in terms of also my juggling of kid things and home things and work things and craft things and things like that. And I feel like in our conversation, I wanted to share this with you because she has a very, very interesting perspective. I think about how this particular show is called Taking Back Friday, and it's about sort of forcibly taking back a chunk of your time in order to spend on things that are meaningful to you. When I was talking to Madeleine, she was bringing up the idea that we should really be focusing on what our expectations are of our time and what might be possible, what is possible given the amount of time that we have, the amount of resources, the amount of energy, mental space, all of these kinds of things, to focus on the expectations side of things. Because if you do expect to be able to carve back a chunk of time, and then you're not, that can be really disheartening. That can be really discouraging. And that can be really frustrating to constantly be pining for the thing that you can't actually have right now. And so, thinking about being able to carve back a chunk of Friday to actually do your craft work, is it actually possible? And if you're really, really hard on yourself about trying to get that time when it's veritably impossible to get that time, you could be doing yourself a great disservice. So what Madeleine and I were talking about, continuing on our conversation, was very much about letting go of judgment and not allowing things like social media or, just seeing what other people are doing, not allowing that to dictate what you should be doing or how you should be spending your time or how you feel like you should be spending your time. Like you feel like you should be really productive. You feel like you should be making a lot of things. And to really let go of all of those expectations, let go of all of that judgment to make a much healthier and safer space for yourself. It's a very interesting thing that Madeleine talked about how she was feeling very sort of isolated. She wasn't able to get out to a knit night, to go out and see other people and do the crafts together and things like that. And that is part of the reason why she started her YouTube vlog or her YouTube podcast. And so that's actually something that I kind of encourage you to also look at too, is that I started this whole thing, these whole conversations, also because I was feeling very isolated, because I'm not going out to knit nights and things like that, because I'm not heading out in the evenings or on the weekends, because I'm doing other things, I have other responsibilities. And so the way that I can participate in the craft community is this way. So I encourage you to see if there's a way that you can also participate in the craft community that it works with your time, with your schedule, with your lifestyle, with all these things. I know many years ago when I started my blog, like a typewritten, written out word blog with photos, words and photos, that's how I started. That's the way that I participated in the craft community. And then later on, after I had kids and I wanted to have conversations again with people in the craft community, I started an audio podcast. That was the way that I had a chance to engage with people and talk to people about their craft. And now finally, this is what I'm doing now. I'm talking to you guys over video because this is the way that I'm participating in the craft community, because this is what is possible and available to me right now. So I just encourage you guys to find your way, your medium, your voice, how you can connect best with people that you want to spend time with, people that you want to learn from. So I would love to hear from you in the comments about whether or not any of these messages resonated with you, what you found the most interesting about Madeleine, and also if you have ever thought about starting a blog or starting a vlog or starting a podcast, I would love to hear about it, or even just put your link for your podcast, your blog, your vlog, whatever you're doing. You can post it in the comments and I will check them all out. I would love to have you guys share with each other, meet each other, share with each other in the comments, so that way we can all see what you guys are doing. This is the way that we meet each other. So that is basically it for today. Thank you so much for being here. If you like this episode, please do hit the like button. And if you would like to see more content like this, please do hit subscribe. And we come here pretty much every Friday to talk about something to do with color and craft and things that make us happy. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you in the next one. All right, bye for now.